Who is an immigrant? Many Americans have a grandparent, great-grandparent, or other relative who made the journey to the United States. Immigrants are brave. It takes courage to leave your home, friends, and job to come to the United States. You need to learn a new language. If you are older and have a family, you often give up a career for a better future for your children. You will be looked down upon, face prejudice, and face many other challenges. Being an immigrant is not easy, but you are the future of the United States. These are the voices of journey. Maria remembers the morning she left Mexico City. Her mother pressed a small wooden cross into her palm and whispered, "Carry us with you." She was 23, newly married, and terrified.
People think we leave because it is easy stirring a pot of pozole in a Chicago apartment. Nothing about leaving is easy. You leave behind the smell of your grandmother's garden, the sound of church bells on Sunday, the way your father laughs.
She crossed the border in 1994 with her husband, Eduardo, and $40. Eduardo found work at a meatpacking plant. Maria cleaned offices at night and studied English during the day.
The hardest part was not the work. It was the silence. Back home, everyone knows your name. Here, you are invisible. You smile at people and they look through you.
Amir does not talk about the bombs. He talks about his father's workshop in Damascus, the way the old man could diagnose an engine by close his eyes and listen, Amir says, like a doctor with a stethoscope. The family fled in 2015. Amir was 31. They spent 2 years in a camp in Jordan before being resettled in Philadelphia. He arrived in January. He had never seen snow.
I remember standing outside the airport and thinking the world had ended. Everything was white and silent. My daughter started crying. My wife held her and said, "This is our home now."
His English was limited to phrases from American action movies. He enrolled in classes at a community center and practiced by watching the local news every night. Within a year, he found work at an auto shop on Michigan Avenue.
Americans think refugees want charity. We want to work. We want to be useful. My father fixed cars for 40 years. I fix cars. My son will probably fix something else, maybe computers, but the principle is the same. You find what is broken and you make it whole.
Today, Amir manages the shop. He hired 2 other refugees last year. On weekends, he teaches Arabic to children at the mosque, so they will not forget where they came from. Lynn was 9 years old when her family boarded a fishing boat in 1979. There were 42 people on a vessel built for 12. She remembers her mother pouring seawater over their heads to keep them cool under the sun.
We were at sea for 6 days. My little brother was so sick. My mother kept saying, "Almost there, almost there." I do not think she knew where there was.
They spent 11 months in a refugee camp in Malaysia before a church in California sponsored their resettlement. Lynn's father, once an engineer, took work as a janitor. Her mother sewed garments in a factory.
My parents never complained, not once. They would say, "We are alive, that is enough." But I could see it in their eyes, the weight of starting over with nothing.
Lynn put herself through community college, then San Jose State. On the tarmac in Lagos, the heat shimmered above the cracked concrete as if the sky itself were anxious. Chidi clutched his blue backpack to his chest, fingers worrying the frayed strap the way his mother used to worry about her rosary. In the backpack were 3 shirts, a jar of ground ogbono his aunt insisted he take, his Nigerian passport, and an envelope with a single sheet of paper that began, "We are pleased to offer you admission." He'd read that sentence so many times, the words felt like a prayer. "We are pleased to offer you admission." When the boarding call echoed through the airport, his breath caught. This was the moment. For months, he'd moved through Lagos like a ghost. Every decision already half in America. He'd walked past the stall where he used to fix phones with his cousin, and imagined strip malls and wide roads, imagined classrooms with humming air conditioners and projectors instead of cracked chalkboards. Chidi had seen the relief in his father's eyes when the visa was approved, had heard his mother crying quietly in the bedroom afterward, half joy, half dread. The United States was far. The United States was expensive. The United States was opportunity. All of it was true. On the plane, he sat by the window and watched his country shrink beneath cotton clouds. Chidi closed his eyes and tried to picture Boston, the city on the admission letter. In his mind, it was all red brick and tall trees, students carrying coffee cups and talking about ideas he didn't yet have words for. He promised himself he would not waste this. In a fluorescent-lit grocery store on the outskirts of Houston, Asher wiped down the conveyor belt for the third time in 5 minutes. The smell of lemons and detergent clung to her hands, drowning out the ghost of cardamom and cumin that once followed her everywhere. The man who stepped up piled groceries on the belt. She scanned, bagged, and smiled mechanically. Her lower back ached from standing, her head from the constant buzz of the store. Back in Ahmedabad, she'd run a small home bakery. People had known her name. They'd ordered her cakes for engagements, her samosas for weddings. Here, her name tag just said Ash. She took the job a week after she landed in the United States, desperate to help pay the rent for the cramped 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her cousin's family. The dream, she reminded herself on slow mornings, was not grocery store fluorescent lights. The dream was to bake again, to rent a stall in a weekend market maybe, to sell cakes that tasted like the ones from home, but looked like the ones on Pinterest boards she scrolled through late at night. Between customers, she scribbled recipe ideas on the backs of receipt paper and tucked them into her apron. Cardamom rose cupcakes, jalebi-inspired donuts, chai-spiced brownies. She didn't know if Americans would like them. She hoped at least a few might. "Hey, Ash," her manager called from the next aisle. "Can you cover Register 3 after your break?" Rosa didn't show. "Sure," she said, forcing another smile. Her cheeks hurt from all the smiling these days. On her 15-minute break, she sat on an overturned milk crate in the stockroom, scrolling through messages from her mother. Photos of the old neighborhood. A picture of the kitchen, where she had spent so many afternoon hours, flour-dusted and happy. Under the photos came the inevitable question, have you eaten properly? Are you safe?
I'm fine. Job is busy. People are
All
nice.
glossy boxes and neat rows, as proof that her world was full, not empty. She didn't send the video she'd taken last night of her tiny corner of the shared kitchen in Houston, where a single pan and 2 dented mixing bowls were stacked next to a jar of masala and a jar of peanut butter. That image was her secret bridge between here and there, fragile but growing. 3 floors above a noisy street in Queens, New York, Matteo pressed his palms into the cool drywall and inhaled the smell of plaster dust. The apartment was gutted, bare studs, exposed wiring, old linoleum curling at the edges like dried leaves. To most people, it would look like a mess. To him, it looked like possibility.
Careful with that hammer, man. We don't need more holes than we already got.
"I'm being careful," Matteo said, though the truth was that his whole body hummed with the same nervous, excited energy he'd felt when he crossed the border 2 years earlier. Back then, the world had been scrub brush and darkness, his heart pounding with each step. Now the world was subways and job sites, subway cards and cash-only pay. But the pounding in his chest was the same every time his name came up in a conversation about raids or paperwork. Today, though, he was thinking about walls. Not walls that kept him out, but walls he could build and paint and maybe, someday, own. He'd come to New York because his cousin promised work. At first, That meant loading and unloading trucks, carrying bags of cement, and waiting for instructions. He didn't speak much English, and found that the less he said, the less people noticed him. But hands spoke their own language. Brick by brick, tile by tile, he learned. One older carpenter showed him how to hang a door so it swung smooth as a secret. Another taught him how to measure twice and cut once, then measure again for good luck. Now the contractor trusted him with small jobs. Patch this, sand that, paint this straight line, Matteo. He did it all with the same care he'd used when he'd sent money back to his parents for the first time, counting the bills 3 times before sealing the envelope. Matteo squinted. The color was soft, almost like the overcast sky before a storm. "They'll like it," he said. "Everyone likes gray now."
Think they'll like the gray?
They both laughed. Trends were a mystery to him. Why one year everyone wanted red accent walls, and the next year only muted tones. But he watched and copied and saved mental notes for the future he still half didn't believe in. A license, a small company, maybe his own van with his name on the side. Matteo Renovations sounded too grand in his head. M. Lopez Handyman, maybe, or just Matteo. As he spackled a crack that snaked down the wall like a faded scar, he thought about the cracks in his own life, the distance between here and his village in Guatemala, the unanswered calls when the signal dropped, the way his little sister's voice sounded older every time he heard it. He pressed the plaster into the wall gently, smoothing it until the damage disappeared under his hands. For a moment, in the empty apartment, with only the sound of traffic below, he allowed himself to imagine a day when he would bring his parents here, show them painted rooms and say, "I did this, with my hands, in this country that once did not want me."
I pressed my forehead against the bus window and watched the landscape change. Behind me lay everything I had ever known. The small town where my mother sold tamales at the market, the schoolyard where my children played, the grave of my husband who had been killed for refusing to pay extortion money to the local gang. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and a thin thread of hope. I'm not a criminal. I am not an invader. I am a 34-year-old mother of 2 who had run out of options. The legal pathways to the United States, the ones described in brochures and government websites, required years of waiting, thousands of dollars in fees, and a sponsor I did not have. The gang members who had murdered my husband had given me a deadline: pay or lose my children. I chose to run. The journey north took 6 weeks. My children and I, a daughter aged 10 and a son aged 7, traveled by bus, by foot, and occasionally in the back of trucks driven by strangers whose kindness I had no choice but to trust. I crossed through Mexico with a group of other families, sharing food and water, sleeping in shelters run by churches and aid organizations. At night, my daughter would ask when they would arrive. I never lied. I don't know, but we will get there. My son rarely spoke during those weeks. He clutched a small wooden car his father had carved for him and stared at the ground. The border was not a wall in the place where they crossed. It was a river, shallow in some places, treacherous in others. I crossed at dawn with water up to my chest, holding my children above the current. On the other side, I turned myself in to Border Patrol agents. I did not run. I asked for asylum. What followed was the part of the story that rarely makes the news. My children and I were processed, fingerprinted, and placed in a detention facility. The room was cold and bright with fluorescent lights that never turned off. My children slept on thin mats on the floor. I did not sleep at all. After 3 weeks, we were released with ankle monitors and a court date 18 months away. A non-profit legal organization in Texas took our case. I learned that my chances of winning asylum were roughly 20%. Better than some, worse than others. The legal system was not designed for people like me. It was not designed against me either. It simply was not designed with me in mind. A church in Houston offered us a room. I found work cleaning offices at night, earning $7.25 an hour, paid in cash, with no protections and no benefits. I can't drive legally. I can't open a bank account. My days follow a rigid pattern. Wake at 5, prepare the children for school, walk them to the bus stop, clean houses until 3, pick them up, cook dinner, leave for the office buildings at 9, return at 2 in the morning. I do this 6 days a week. On Sundays, I go to church and allow myself to cry. The ankle monitor chafes my skin. I charge it every night like a phone. It is a leash, a reminder that my presence in this country is conditional, temporary, and subject to a judge's decision.